Did you know that there's a world where you can relive all of your happiest memories, as many times as you like?
Leaving the train one day, I set out across the meadows for the memory forest.
I saw a great many peculiar sights along the way, strange beasts that grazed amongst the purple pastures, elephantine phantoms plodding a restless course through the skies, and even a city made of glass shimmering on the horizon, but of course I had the good sense not to walk towards it. I found the memory forest as I had always imagined it, having wandered beneath its shaded boughs many times in my dreams. The trees, ancient and gnarled but full of color, loomed up before me, and the sounds of a million ticking clocks filled the balmy air. "Be careful," warned the trees as I entered. "Every moment spent here counts for double back in your world."
I didn't listen to them.
What are a few lost moments when you can relive the sweetest, happiest, most cherished parts of your life again and again?
The sounds of the wider world quickly faded away, until all that remained was a soft exhalation through the leaves and the ticking of the clocks. They hung from every branch, some small, others large, and all apparently ticking at a different rate.
Gigantic grandfather clocks squatted between the trees, and a low thrum beneath my feet suggested that a heartbeat of time was beating even in the earthy depths.
"Beware," warned another one of the trees.
"Stay here too long and you'll run out of time.
You'll lose your future and have nothing to go back to." "I will keep track of time," I said, pulling out my pocket watch. "Do you see? I won't let time get away from me."
"It goes by much quicker than you think," said another tree, its sonorous voice echoing through the forest.
"And then before you know it, it's gone." "You don't frighten me," I replied, looking the tree directly in its bottomless eyes. "I won't stay for too long.
A few memories and then I'll head back to the train."
I really meant it.
My journey had only just begun and there were tickets to stamp, passengers to greet. This was only ever meant to be a short stop.
All of my possessions were still on board and my fellow conductors would be waiting for me.
Strange, I thought, that none of them chose to accompany me and relive their memories, but such worries passed quickly.
Even the mood of the trees seemed to brighten.
Rather than issuing dire warnings, they began to sing soft, nostalgic songs with the texture of broken hearts and loss, that somehow managed to be happy and bittersweet at the same time. Those songs guided me ever deeper into the forest, and then finally to a clearing that glowed with unearthly white light. I hesitated, not from fear but because something in the light, so pure, so untouched as though mine were the only eyes ever to sully it with a look, took my breath away.
The singing had stopped.
Even the sounds of the clocks had dwindled to distant echoes that might only exist inside my imagination.
Silence settled so completely that I wondered whether anything would ever break it. I took a few steps forward until I was immersed in the light.
Beauty, unfiltered and undeniably true, brought tears to my eyes, and then I realized that it wasn't just light in the clearing. Creatures, beings, entities, I wasn't sure what to call them, drifted through the glade, borne this way and that upon hidden undulations. They were the source of the light, so bright that I couldn't look at them directly, but I felt their warmth and something more, something like time, or at least the idea of time. Immersed in this white light, my body adopted an airy complexion and then seemed to disappear entirely. The sensation was not at all unpleasant, and then suddenly I was only thoughts. Without the encumbrance of a body, I found that my mind could move easily this way and that at an alarming pace. It tripped through one memory after another, edging ever closer to a kind of totality where everything was happening all at once. Sailing the high seas of this euphoric state, I let my memories sweep me away in any direction they chose. The light grew more intense and then suddenly diminished, resolving into a flower meadow on a summer day. The sea sparkled like a half-realized dream on the horizon, perhaps a little too bright, perhaps a little unreal, and cicadas trilled in the tall grass.
My body returned. I was a physical being again, except I was smaller. I reached out. Those were my hands. A child again. I knew exactly where I was.
I dashed through the golden fields of my childhood, the sun warm on my back, the meadow turning golden as the final days of summer matured towards autumn. I ducked and dived, playing amongst the tall grasses as the crickets chirped around me, and there, two long faded faces, two long missed, long mourned faces.
My parents. Waiting for me on a hill overlooking the sea. A picnic. We were having a picnic.
I dashed over to join them and they showed no surprise to see me.
For them, I had only been gone for a few moments, playing in the fields.
They were beyond time, with no loss, No years, no decades.
It is difficult to explain now, almost impossible, but the scene was both a memory and a reality.
I looked back on it with all the joy of somebody recalling a blissful memory, but it was also happening as though for the first time. I experienced the peace and contentment of that day along with a much more profound sense of joy to be with my parents again, to see them living and real, long after they had died.
Naturally, I forgot all about time, which didn't exist inside the memory.
I can't recall how long I stayed in the field or even how I left, and found myself back in the memory forest.
How long was I away?
I asked in alarm, because it felt as though a great deal of time had passed.
Pulling out my pocket watch, I discovered that I had been absent for a great deal longer than I expected.
The sight of the lost time sent a chill coursing through my veins, but this sensation of terror mingled with something else, a profound desire to return to my memories, and an aching loss in the shape of absence at having left them behind at all. For a moment this gave way to another emotion, anger, even fury at time and the cruel insistence of the future, on its obliterating passage through our lives.
Don't worry.
The voice took me by surprise, coming from the edge of the clearing amongst the trees.
You weren't gone for long. It always feels longer. Forget time. Memories are more important.
Shielding my eyes against the white light, I took a few steps out of the clearing and then stopped dead. A figure clad all in black, their face hidden beneath a gigantic hood, was watching me. Another 3 stood further away, half concealed behind the trees as if they were trying to hide but couldn't resist observing me.
I know how long I was gone. I replied hesitantly, holding up my watch. Too long. I should be getting back to the train. Another 2 hooded figures emerged from between the trees, watching me closely. I knew who, or rather what, they were. The forgetful.
People who, like me, visited the memory forest with a reasonable desire to relive 1 or 2 of their happiest memories and then leave. Instead, they stayed for too long, reliving memory after memory and losing their futures. Now they roam the forest walked and undead, trying to get back what they lost, a feat that they will never achieve, because time is the only commodity in the world that cannot be recovered once lost.
Or so the legends say.
A cautionary tale about spending too much time in memories and forgetting that the past is the price we pay for the future.
They seemed peaceful enough, watching me from a safe distance. There's no harm in remembering, said the lead forgetful, his voice warm. Why not relive 1 more before you leave?
I already knew that I would. That 1 memory wasn't enough to sate my appetite, but I argued all the same, telling the hooded figure that I couldn't lose any more time, that the train was waiting, that I should be moving on.
Don't worry, said the forgetful at last, taking a step forward. We will be here. They say that we are cruel and vindictive, or that we have lost our minds, but we are only here to help. We will watch over you. Relive another memory. We will bring you back if too much time has passed. That was all the encouragement I needed.
I stepped back into the white light, and this time the process was much faster, even immediate.
I found myself in a coffee shop in my old hometown. It took me a few moments to realize why I was there.
Anna.
We were about to meet for the first time.
Before I could savor this moment, the door to the coffee shop swung open and there she was.
Long gone now, but she stood before me again, as real as she ever was. I found myself walking towards her, about to speak, about to.
We were side by side beneath the stars on some far-flung beach, the moon hanging like an overripe fruit about to fall.
Anna walked a few steps ahead of me, and the wind, whispering across the sea, swept away any sense that this was just a memory. It was real. Anna turned around. I took her hand and allowed her to pull me further away from reality and deeper into the white light.
So it was that I relived memory after memory, some from my childhood, some from much later, including the first time I set foot in the station between worlds.
At times I was able to immerse myself so totally that the memories became reality. At others, I was aware that I ought to leave, that I was losing time back in my world. Eventually, and with great effort, I was able to extricate myself from the white light. Something different hung in the air. A sensation of age. The forest was darker, crooked.
The trees didn't speak, but an even larger crowd of forgetful had gathered, forming a ring around the clearing.
With my head spinning and my heart aching for what was past, I tried to leave but found the hooded figures blocking my path.
I made a half-hearted attempt to jostle them aside, but more crowded in until I was surrounded.
Why leave? One of them asked. Weren't you happier in the past? I have to,
I replied, alarmed at how feeble my voice sounded.
I need to, there are things I need to.
My voice trailed away because I couldn't think of one good reason to leave the forest and my memories behind.
The future held nothing that the past didn't already have in abundance.
Happiness, love, family, contentment, peace.
It was all behind, not ahead. We will keep watch over time for you, said the forgetful in a reassuring tone. And bring you back if too much passes. I tried to focus but found that I was incapable even of replying.
The power of those memories, the sweetness, the bliss, of returning to the happiest moments in my life, was too much to resist. It permeated every pore of my being until I was immersed, engulfed, and incapable. I could not say no, and worse, I couldn't see any reason to. The future was suddenly a hateful thing, a thief and a waste that I wanted no part of.
The past. The past was where I belonged and where I wanted to be. One more memory, I said. That's all, and then I must get back to the train, to my life. Except even my life didn't seem especially appealing.
I was struck with a heartbreaking sensation that my real life, my desirable and happy life, was long behind me. It existed in memories, not in the future, and the future was a small price to pay to be happy again. I mumbled something else about not staying long, but even I didn't believe it or didn't care, or both. Bathed in white light, I inhabited memory after memory, and then when I had run out of memories I relived them all over again.
Lost in this labyrinth, I forgot all about time and eventually my old life. Reality consisted only of memories, but gradually they began to change.
Grey seeped in at the corners and like fading Polaroids, the memories lost focus. Some fragmented, others blended into surrealistic dreamscapers that hardly resembled real life. Others fell apart so convincingly that I could no longer access them, or they were interrupted by yawning, dark chasms that I stumbled into, flailing helplessly as I tried to remember something, anything, to pull me back into the light. All of a sudden I was back on the beach beneath the stars with Anna.
We walked hand in hand for a few steps, the sea ticking like a clock.
A clock? The sea did not, I couldn't remember, and above us the moon, with the face of a tree, eyed us, me, with alarm.
Be careful, said Anna, looking me straight in the eye.
Every moment spent here counts for double back in your world. I tried to recall exactly why she would say such a thing, whether she did say such a thing, but the beach, yes it was a beach, was suddenly full of trees, talking trees that chattered and ticked like clocks and conversed in urgent tones with the sea.
I am time, the sea seemed to say, but the clocks objected, tried to argue that they were time, and the two bickered like an old married couple. Married?
Were Anna and I ever? I couldn't remember.
My foot struck something solid and I fell, expecting to land on soft sand.
Instead, I found tree roots and cold firm earth, and, as I fell I dropped something, a watch, my pocket watch, always carried as a conductor on a train from the station between worlds. Anna and I never walked through a forest, I never dropped my watch, and she never said.
The memory shattered and the white light cleared. I was in the heart of the memory forest, but it was draped in darkness.
Hooded figures crowded around the edge of the clearing, watching me intently.
A strange hum filled the air and it took me several moments to realize that it was coming from the forgetful. They were chanting.
The awful sound of it, coupled with the realization that I must have lost months, years, even decades, set my heart hammering in my chest. Stooping, I retrieved the shattered fragments of my watch, but it was beyond repair, its broken parts strewn across the forest floor. I recoiled, tried to flee, but the forgetful pressed in closer, preventing my escape. I looked to the trees for help, but their eyes were closed, either sound asleep or too afraid to watch. Let me out, I yelled, but my voice sounded unfamiliar and I didn't dare say anything else. Struggling against the hooded figures, I finally managed to force my way through, but the forest was full of them. They emerged from behind the trees, the shadows, stepping out from behind clocks and bushes, always reaching out, always trying to block my path. Grasping hands appeared from every angle. The forest closed around me like a noose, but I ducked and dived, shoving the forgetful aside until one flew at me from the shadows.
We fought briefly, its hood fell back and what lay beneath was hardly human at all.
A bedraggled woman of impossible age, her face was nearly transparent, her eyes sightless.
A few strands of hair hung matted from her head.
She looked more than half dead but moved with alarming speed, seizing my arm in a grip so tight that it drew blood. A brief tussle ensued, and in a wild panic, I managed to throw her off, staggering in any direction until I found the path out of the memory forest.
The trees weren't singing now. They watched me pass with a mixture of despair and horror. They didn't speak, and nor did I speak to them.
I got the impression that they wanted me gone, out, that I had greedily guzzled too many memories and lost too much time. Even the cacophony of ticking clocks was slow and strange, as though their mechanisms, and perhaps the entire forest, were winding down.
It isn't the clocks. I realized it's me.
Stumbling out of the forest, it took me a few moments to remember where I was, or, more precisely, the way back to the train.
The train.
The thought of it restored a little of my senses, recalling me to the world that still existed, and I began to run. I found the platform empty, of course, my train having left long ago.
I wondered how long they waited, expecting, and then hoping, that I would return. My friends. My family. A tight knot of nausea twisted in my stomach when I realized that I had left them all behind.
Some would have forgotten about me by now, others might still think of me occasionally with sorrow, as one lost too early. Without my pocket watch, I can't say how long I waited on that deserted train platform, but the world had changed almost beyond recognition. The purple pastures were withered and dead, the peculiar, gentle giants who grazed them long gone. Even the glass city didn't deign to appear on the horizon, and the wind that blew was barren and empty.
I wondered what was left of the worlds, and my world. My home. Perhaps they no longer existed, or not in the way I remembered.
Eventually, the wind carried a new sound to my ears.
The sound of a train. Civilization. A route back to the station between worlds. My heart leapt in my chest, because all wasn't lost after all.
True, I had let my train go, but I would be able to explain it all.
How the forgetful tricked me, how the warnings from the trees were not dire enough, how it was all just too tempting.
Except the train that appeared was unfamiliar, and so were the conductors who disembarked on the platform. They wore the uniform of the station between worlds, but I didn't recognize them, and it was clear that they didn't recognize me, either. I realized how battered and beaten I must look from my dash through the forest, how hungry and tired and baffled.
The unfamiliar conductor noticed my uniform, now tattered and torn, and eyed me with outright alarm. When I clambered on board, several of the passengers rose from their seats to get a better look, as anxious murmurs rippled along the carriage. I stood in stunned awe for a few moments, the carriage seeming to shift before my eyes. This world no longer belonged to me. I was passing through somebody else's dream. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to face one of the conductors. "Who are you?" he asked anxiously.
Who am I? The question rattled this way and that like old bones.
"I don't know."